All right, so today we're tackling the climate crisis, but we're going to look at it from a totally different angle. Not just melting ice caps, not just rising temps. We're going to dig into it as a crisis of justice. And believe it or not, the whole thing kicks off with one tiny number.
So here it is, 1.2 degrees Celsius. That's it. That's how much the world has warmed up, on average, since we started building factories and all that. Now, I know what you're thinking. 1.2 degrees, that sounds like nothing, right? You probably wouldn't even notice that change in your living room. But, and this is the crazy part, that tiny little number is literally powerful enough to redraw the entire map of our planet. And that right there, that's the big question we're trying to unpack today. How on earth can a number that small cause a crisis this big? How does it lead to these absolutely massive, life-changing consequences for, well, billions of us? To even begin to get our heads around that, we need to zoom out. We have to start with the global view.
Okay, so let's start with that wide-angle lens. Let's look at the global scale to see the different faces of this crisis. And I want to be super clear here. This isn't science fiction. We're not talking about some far-off future prediction. This is happening as we speak all across the planet, and every single bit of it ties back to that 1.2-degree rise.
And man, the impacts are just staggering. I mean, you've got entire island nations in the Pacific, like Tuvalu, that are literally disappearing under the rising sea. At the same time, over in East Africa, they're dealing with the worst drought in 100 years, leading to just devastating famine. Then you have Australia's megafires. Remember those? They wiped out an estimated 3 billion animals. And in Pakistan, a third of the entire country was underwater from floods. The scale is just, it's hard to even wrap your mind around.
Think about that for a second. For the people living in Tuvalu, this isn't some abstract debate about carbon credits. It's existential. They're facing the very real possibility of becoming climate refugees, being forced to leave the only home they've ever known because it might just not be there anymore. This isn't just about the environment. This is about survival. It's about human rights. And at its core, it's about justice.
And here's a really crucial point the source material hammers home. None of these things are separate events. You can't look at the floods here, the fires there, and the drought over there as isolated incidents. It's better to think of them as symptoms, different, roaring symptoms of one single planetary sickness. This isn't a crisis that's coming. It's here, now.
Okay, so we've seen the big, scary, global picture. But honestly, the real story, the one that truly shows you what this crisis is about, is often in the small details. So now, we're going to zoom way in. We're going from those big international headlines down to a single city. Because this is where you really see how climate change isn't just something that happens to a place. No, it's something that finds the cracks, the inequalities that are already there, and pries them wide open.
Take Seoul. In August 2022, the city got hit with the heaviest rainfall it had seen in 80 years. But the real tragedy wasn't just the amount of rain. It was where that water ended up. In a neighborhood called Sinlimdong, a family was living in one of those low-cost, semi-basement apartments. When the flash floods hit, their only way out was blocked. Their home, which was probably their only option, their last resort, it became a death trap. See, this wasn't just some random act of nature. This was a social disaster.
And it's the exact same story when it comes to heat. Picture a scorching heat wave, right? Say 38 degrees Celsius, that's 100 degrees Fahrenheit. For someone working from home in an air-conditioned apartment, it's annoying. Maybe you complain about it on a Zoom call. But for a construction worker out in the direct sun all day, or a delivery driver, or an elderly person who can't afford to run the AC, for them, that same temperature isn't an inconvenience. It's a lethal threat. It's one weather event, but two totally separate, unequal realities.
And this is the absolute heart of the matter. The climate crisis is what you'd call a threat multiplier. It doesn't create the cracks in society, but it finds the ones that are already there. Poverty, bad housing, unstable jobs, and it just smashes them wide open. So you see, it's not really just a weather problem at all. It's an inequality problem.
So, okay, if the problem makes injustice worse, it stands to reason that the solution has to actively create justice, right? Well, the source material we're looking at has a name for this. It's a framework called a just transition. So, what in the world does that actually mean?
To put it simply, a just transition is the idea that we can't just flip a switch to green energy and, high-five each other. It's about making sure that as we make this huge shift, the people who are most vulnerable, think of a coal miner whose job is disappearing, or a factory worker in a fossil fuel industry, are actually taken care of. They need support, new training, new jobs, not just a pink slip. It's about making sure no one gets left behind in the shuffle.
So how do you make this idea real? Well, it breaks down into some really concrete actions. First, it means actually creating new jobs and providing real support for people whose industries are fading out. Second, it means we have to redesign our cities. We have to get rid of death traps like those basement apartments. And third, it means passing actual laws to protect people who work outside from deadly heat. It's all about building a safety net right into the heart of our climate plan.
But you know what? The source material goes even deeper. It argues that all these policies, as important as they are, aren't enough on their own. There's another layer. So for this last part, we're going to do one final zoom in. Not on a city, not on a community, but into our own perspective. It's about a fundamental shift in how we see the world and, maybe more importantly, our place in it.
Now, to help frame this massive idea, the source pulls from this ancient text. And look, the point here isn't really a religious one. It's about the perspective it offers. This idea that the entire natural world, the whole creation, is experiencing a kind of shared struggle, a shared pain. It's a way of thinking that suggests our fate and the planet's fate aren't separate things. They're deeply, deeply connected.
And this idea leads us to a pretty powerful term, ecological conversion. The source also uses the original Greek word metanoia. All it really means is a profound change of mind, or a complete change of direction. It's not just a small tweak. It's a call to fundamentally rewire the way we see everything.
So what does this shift actually look like? Well, it's pretty profound. It's about moving away from this old idea of nature as just a big warehouse full of stuff for us to use up and exploit, and instead moving towards seeing nature as a community that we don't own, but that we belong to. And with that belonging comes a responsibility to take care of it.
And let's be clear, this is so much bigger than just recycling your plastic bottles or bringing a reusable bag to the store. It's not about a checklist of green things to do. It's about a total transformation of our relationship with the world around us. It's the difference between seeing a glass of water as a product you buy and seeing it as the incredible gift that it is.
So, that's where we land. With a challenge, really. A question for all of us to think about. Is this climate crisis just a huge, complicated technical problem? Something to be fixed with the right policies and enough carbon credits? Or is it something more? Is it maybe a painful and incredibly urgent invitation to change our entire story? To rediscover what it truly means to belong to this beautiful, struggling, and completely interconnected world?